Joining us now is Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Sir, great to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I want to take a step back before we get into the details of Obamagate and Russiagate. I want you to remind everyone what happened to you and what the FBI did to you. We have a lot of younger listeners in our audience that are not as familiar or have memory of it. They didn't live through it. The FBI sent people to entrap you in the guise of offering you help in the first days of the administration. You were patient zero, sir. Please walk us through it and remind us.
Yeah, so for your audience, Charlie, when President Obama first met with President-elect Trump right after the 2016 presidential election, he had a very short conversation with him. And President Obama at that time told President Trump that he should not hire me. And it was very odd. And Trump and I spoke about that after his meeting with Obama. It was just odd that why would the President of the United States, in transitioning the entirety of the government, point out one person, in this case, me, to not hire? And of course, you know, what Trump did was he then hired me as the national security advisor. And we now know, Charlie, so if you go back and you look at the dates and the timeline, now we know about this 8 December 2016 meeting. We know about the 5 January 2017 meeting where there was collusion inside the Oval Office led by Barack Obama. And it's very clear now. The evidence is really clear. We were able to, in my case, sort of jump forward to fast forward. Jim Comey, the director of the FBI, sent in 2 agents to my office. They interviewed me, no problem. And I didn't have any issues with it. I'd been working with the FBI for the better part of 15 years prior to that. And I didn't lie to them then. And they actually said that. They wrote it down. We found that out in evidence later on. They then came after me very hard when the Mueller investigation hit. When they came after me, this is where they brought my family in, right? And they threatened me, and they threatened my son, my youngest son, who was about to have a child, with basically all kinds of felony counts, and we're going to throw you in prison, you know, for years. So that was all true. That's all come out. And they went after me because, you know, why? Why did Obama say that to Trump? Why did Obama go after me so hard early on? Because, Charlie, there's been, you know, and I'll pat myself on the back here, there's not been a national security advisor to the United States of America with my background. Not one. I mean, going back to Henry Kissinger, who I met three times to do also, kind of a handoff.
And let me interject. You were also very cautious on Russia. You see, they needed to take you out because they wanted to get to a kinetic war against Russia, and you had a much more cautious, realistic, and restrained approach to Russia. So you were critical not only to manufacture the Russian narrative because they tried to, you know, gin up something because of some trip that you took or whatever, but to use you as a centerpiece. You were a stumbling block because you did not believe in the DC empire's view that Russia was our greatest enemy. You were necessary for removal. I would argue that if you sustained through the first Trump administration, that we might never have had Russiagate. Please continue.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, one of the things that I talked to Trump about during the 2016 campaign, and certainly going into the administration after he won, was I wanted, and I still believe this, we must pull Russia out of the influence, the sphere of influence that China has, right? China is really the sort of the wolf at the door here. So we have to pull Russia, and that's what I was talking about then. We've got to figure out ways to pull them out. We've never been to war. We've never been at war with Russia. Russia supported us during World War II. Russia supported us in the Middle East. I mean, most people, maybe a lot in your audience don't realize, but we were working with the Russian Navy. We were working with Russian military in places like Syria, going against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So we had a great relationship after the end of the Cold War. I actually worked and trained with Russian forces in different training exercises and scenarios that we had in the 90s and into the early 2000s, and of course until 9/11. So Russia actually, and I wrote something in the last 4 days here, Charlie, about sort of rules for diplomacy that I would, you know, bring your audience to the attention of that. But there's 80% in a good poll, 80% of the Russian people in Russia today, mostly young people, Charlie, want a more positive relationship with the United States of America because they feel aligned with us. So back then in the 2016, 2017 timeframe, the Obama administration did some really terrible things. They expelled a bunch of Russians. They put sanctions on the Russians for no other reason than to upset the incoming Trump administration. And one of the actions that I took, among many, talking to foreign leaders, which was I was authorized to do and fully by rights to do, I spoke with the Russians multiple times to let them know, look, let's let cool heads prevail. President Trump has a different view on foreign policy. Let us get into the office of the presidency so we can start a different tack going down the road when it came to Russia. The Obama administration wasn't having anything of it, and frankly, the intelligence community and many on both sides of the political aisle that likes to have a war, a boogeyman in the name of Russia, 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 because, Charlie, and this is for your audience, there are billions and billions of dollars that flow into the coffers as long as we have that boogeyman called Russia. And the American taxpayers, Charlie, we can't afford it anymore. We can't afford to have these wars going on. And for everybody that's
it's also just dumb. Even if we could afford it, we should not be at war against Russia. Even if we were endlessly rich and we had a sovereign wealth fund, it is not in our geopolitical interest. I don't like Putin. You don't like Putin. I don't like the way they've been acting. I don't like the fact they bomb churches on Palm Sunday. That really bothered me when they did that. But the real enemy is all to the east. It's the Chinese Communist Party. Can we build a hegemonic coalition against the rise of the Chinese Communist Party?
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, with my wife Shirley, who is 82. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the 2 videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
It's all about China. And so much of this is about trying to distract and divide, separate what should be a coalition against the Chinese Communist Party. So now let's talk about John Brennan. I'm of the opinion, and I want your opinion, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, that we need to be very cautious and very careful going about possibly indicting Barack Obama himself. I think we should start with John Brennan. I think John Brennan is the central nervous system. He's the offensive coordinator. He was calling the plays. He was the maestro of the orchestra. I think that is the lowest hanging fruit, and he does not have presidential immunity. Do you agree? And if so, what could he be charged for realistically?
Yeah, I do agree that he is the sort of the linchpin here, Charlie. And I do think that there are people, in fact, I know because partly Tulsi has said it, but I also am aware that there are whistleblowers that have come forward with some very, very egregious information as it relates to that man that you're showing right now. There are going to be other leaders that were in the rooms with Barack Obama, with those two, with Obama and Brennan, that are also going to, they're going to talk because they don't want to get into trouble here. There is a conspiracy, and it is still an ongoing conspiracy. And so all this talk about statutes of limitations, I'll leave it to the constitutional lawyers who have studied this thing and looked at the problems that this guy is involved in, that Brennan is involved in. But he's got a lot. He's at risk right now in a big, big way. And I have a funny feeling that once you start to bring these people in, and I've been very public about guys like Jim Clapper, because Jim Clapper, I believe you bring Jim Clapper in, Jim Clapper will spill the beans. Jim Clapper has already said publicly on a cable news network that they were ordered by Obama to do it. We now see the evidence. So he said it, and that's fine. But now we have the evidence coming out of the Director of National Intelligence's mouth and documented that shows that, in fact, these things happened. Tulsi Gabbard the other day on another show talked about these things happening. So So the legalities of what these people are facing, I think, are severe. It has to happen. I think that the president of the United States also needs to understand this, again, for your young audience. The president of the United States is the president of the United States. He is the commander in chief, but he's also the chief law enforcement officer of the country, not the attorney general. The attorney general is the attorney general. And frankly, you don't even need to be a lawyer to be the attorney general of the United States of America. Most people don't know that. But the chief law enforcement officer is the president, who has extraordinary authority and power, executive power. And the president's going to have to, he's going to have to weigh in from time to time to direct his justice system to follow what I call the constitutional order of our country, to go after and hold to account people like Brennan, people like Jim Comey. And there are going to be others. And once they start that ball rolling and they start holding these people accountable, I think, and frankly, the evidence is there. We don't need years-long investigations. The evidence is there. And frankly, for the courageousness of Tulsi Gabbard, who I'm a big fan of, she's exposing more and more. And what these people do know, Charlie, is they know that there's more to come. I mean, she is like a good lawyer. And even though she's not one, she's holding cards that these people know exist. People like him know exist. People like Comey know exist. She's holding these cards because they're going to use them in the courtroom, right? In the system that we call, our constitutional order, right? And so when this happens, Katie barred the door as to what these people are going to start talking about. But that has to happen. At the same time, President Trump is having to deal with the situation in the Middle East. He's having to deal with frankly, it's a losing war in Ukraine. So Ukraine lost the war. It's that part is done. They're already talking about 60-year-olds trying to get 60-year-olds to serve in the Ukrainian military. So it is a giant money laundering pit, and that needs to end. And the president, he knows that, but he's got to really take heed of the type of advice that he's getting. But his number one priority, Charlie, and I'll finish with this, is what we all have come to believe in, this phrase, not make America great again. That's Trump's campaign bumper sticker, and it got him 2 victories. But really the phrase is America first. And America first is not in isolation to the rest of the world. No, this is important. America first is getting and making sure that we take care of our country. Listen, for the young people of the future.
Stay there. We're gonna blow the brakes. It's America first, not America only. It's a very important distinction. It's America leader, it's America first, but it's also, we do not want America everywhere. That's also a difference. It's not America everywhere. President Trump has blazed a new trail. Play cut 393, please, if we have that loaded.
John Brennan and Jim Comey and I are part of the group that were tasked by President Obama to put together all the reporting we had on the Russian interference, and which we did. President Obama directly and personally confronted Putin about the Russian interference in September and did not accept at face value Putin's protestations. John Brennan directly did the same thing with his counterpart.
Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, was that the clip that you were mentioning?
Yeah, I'd say that's perfect. That was perfect. So thank you for teeing that up. So for your audience, so he said in September, and that's September of 2016, what's very important is on the 3rd of August of 2016, 3 August 2016, Brennan, back to Brennan, he brought into President Obama at that time into the Oval Office the dossier and told Obama at that time that was made up information from the Hillary Clinton campaign that they were going to use as their October surprise against Trump to win the presidency. So Brennan and Obama on the 3rd of August of 2016 knew then that it was made up baloney from the Hillary Clinton campaign to attack Trump so she could be the president. So here's Clapper. It's a really important piece of evidence here. That Clapper says in September, so a month later, here is Clapper saying that the president directed him as the director of national intelligence to gather all the evidence about what Russia was doing to interfere in our elections. Well, Obama already knew that this scheme was in play. That was August of 2016. Now we fast forward, Trump wins, and I'll remind your audience again, there was a very famous text message that I brought out in my case from Strzok to his lover and number 2 lawyer at the FBI, Lisa Page. Peter Strzok was the deputy director of counterespionage for the FBI. And in his text message to her is, if Trump wins, we have a insurance policy, right? If he should win, we have an insurance policy. Well, after I get picked by Trump, after Obama said, no, we can't have him, I get picked by Trump to be the national security advisor. Now it's like, oh my God, this guy who ran one of the largest intelligence agencies in the world, had a very different view and was very close to Trump on our foreign policy ideas. On the 8th of December, this is one of the bombshells that Tulsi discovered. On the 8th of December, in the Oval Office, after Trump beat Hillary, which they didn't expect, they then sat in that meeting and they conspired to start the engines of Russia going. Fast forward one more month, 5 January 2017, they did it again. This time in that meeting, and this is hard evidence, Charlie, in the court of law, hard evidence that during that 5 January meeting, they said, essentially, we need to get Flynn out in order to get Trump.
What do you want the administration to focus on that you're afraid they might miss in the cacophony of corruption here? What would you say is the strategic plan, the pinpoint, the North Star that we can't lose sight of? Lieutenant General Michael Flynn.
Thank you, Charlie. I think for Trump really needs to remind people what our country is all about. That light, right, on the hill, right? He's got to give hope to the American people, and the way he gives us that hope is by telling the American people that, look, here is our plan, what's already been exposed, to do things to reform the government, to reduce the size of the government. And he's already talking about our economy and the things that we need to do, as we just talked about, America first. But it does not mean America alone. He also is he must end this war in Ukraine. He has to. We can't keep, pouring more money into a sieve. He's got to end that war. And he also needs to figure out a way to bring the Middle East back to the Abraham Accords, which I thought was one of the fundamental, the big ticket marks on his previous administration. So those are 3 big issues. The idea of hope matters to the American people, but it's hope with a purpose. And that purpose means you're going to have to hold people accountable. The president is going to have to spend, days of his time directly involved in where are we with holding these people accountable, because the American people, Charlie, are not walking away from this. They are not walking away from the idea of accountability.
Agree. So I want to zero in on two things you said. I might keep you a little bit beyond the break here because it's so important. The Russia thing, I completely agree. I don't think we should be sending more weapons to Ukraine. I know why Trump is doing it, and I can even make an argument for it, and I sympathize for it. But how do we end this thing then? Because it seems as if Putin does not want a settlement to it. If you were advising, what is the way that we could come to a conclusion to this Russian-Ukrainian war?
Yeah, I think, President Putin made a statement yesterday, I think it was 24 hours ago, and it's very important, and Trump should listen to it. If one of his advisors hasn't brought it to him, Trump needs to listen to Putin's speech like in the last 24, 48 hours. And his speech, he said, these are our lines, right? So Trump needs to call up Putin, and he needs to say, okay, where are you? And I'm just talking about the two of them. I'm not talking about with Zelensky, because Zelensky is neutered. He's not effective. Trump needs to call up Putin and say, where is it in that red lines, those red lines that you drew, that you are willing to negotiate? Are you willing to negotiate? Are you willing to negotiate, let's say, an election in the 4 Donbasses, the 4 provinces that Putin mentioned in his speech? Are you willing to talk about, because there's a place, geography, and I'll point your audience to it, a place called Odessa, and Crimea. We have to think about that. Also, east of the Urals, the Ural Mountains are in Russia, right? And east of the Urals matter. And Trump and Putin, if Putin was listening to me right now, Charlie, and Obama, and Trump was listening to me, they would know what that means. The other thing is, Charlie, we tend to think about Ukraine in isolation of just that piece of geography. Cuba matters, Venezuela matters, other parts of the world matter in these alliances and these structures that we have. So the United States of America ought to be bringing in Cuba. What's the future relationship that we're going to have with the Cubans? What's our future relationship that we're going to have with the Venezuelans? I mean, there's more to negotiating than just that piece of turf that splits the Russian Federation and Ukraine right now. And frankly, I think personally, I would tell Trump NATO has to be off the table because Putin and they're just not going to allow it. And frankly, if you go back to the 1994 Budapest Accords, where we committed to no expansion of NATO, and I wrote about this in an article that I published in the last 48 hours here about my rules for diplomacy. People can go to my website to read it, or go follow me on X, read it.
So now let's go to, you mentioned the Abraham Accords. On this program, we are on Team Civilization. We want Israel to win. However, a lot of people are growing exhausted with the war. Israel, it does not help to have long wars, long conflict. It's not good for anybody involved. A lot of people are in America, they're growing exhausted with this issue that is certainly being used to divide a lot of good people. What then is your advice on the Israel issue? Thoughts on Netanyahu, his government, the Likud party, please, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn.
Yeah. So first of all, Charlie, wars of attrition never help either side because they come at a huge cost in lives and treasure. I think that for the Israelis internally, the Israelis need to do some soul searching. There's going to have to be some truth bombs that are going to have to come out of the Israeli leadership. And they're going through their own machinations right now between Netanyahu and the leadership in the military, because they're talking about, the occupation of Gaza. Go ask any Marine that served in Beirut during the Beirut barracks bombing, which was like back in 1983. We lost hundreds of Marines. So occupation forces don't, they don't work. So there's got to be soul searching there, but that soul searching also has to occur in the White House, and President Trump is going to have to talk to his own internal team to say, what is it that we can do? He's going to have to engage the leadership of the Arab world, and I mean in a much bigger way than he's doing right now. I know that he's got Witkoff doing all kinds of things. He's got Special Envoy Witkoff in the Middle East and Oman. He's got him up in Russia. We're spreading our forces too thin here. We have got to make a decision about Ukraine, and I think the war's got to end. And so the funding of additional resources, that has got to end. I'm sorry. I mean, I love Trump. I fought tooth and nail for him. I've been on Team Trump, Team America. Back to the wars and back to kind of the future. So because now I'm going to use the word nuclear, Charlie, and I know I don't want to take too much time because I know you got a show to run here.
You're fine. You're good.
But for your audience, your young audience, nuclear warfare scares the crap out of me, so it should scare the crap out of your young audience. We have had discussions about nuclear capabilities more in the last year and a half than in my, almost 4 decades of service in uniform and to this country. I've never heard this much talk about nuclear capabilities and nuclear standoffs. Once you cross that threshold, and here we are on the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those are devastating capabilities. And I wrote about that again in this article, because you can't talk about a tactical nuclear weapon. It's poison. It's going to kill millions and millions of people, and it's going to destroy the fabric of a large chunk of geography just from the tactical standpoint, never mind the strategic aspects of using a nuclear capability, which then escalates it even further, which is what we're continuing to see in the Middle East and in Europe. Trump doesn't want any of that. President Trump, you campaign on being the president of peace. I know that's what you want. And what I want you to do is I want you to tell the American people what your plans are, what your objectives are to achieve that, because we will stand with you as long as we understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I do, if I were with the president sitting in the Oval Office, I would recommend that, and I would help craft some of that. We've got to tell the American people, we got to be totally transparent, because what Tulsi Gabbard is dropping in terms of the subversion and espionage directed against the American people over the last, 8-10 years is just extraordinary. That's going to have to be dealt with, and these wars are going to have to be dealt with. And it needs almost a State of the Union-like speech to the American people. Maybe it's an Oval Office speech by the president. I mean, I want this president to so succeed, and in a big way where they start, give me the tools and I'll start chipping away on Mount Rushmore. That's how much I want him to succeed, and he can do it. He's got the mandate to do it. He's not the political, he doesn't have that he's not a typical politician. He knows, he uses good common sense, but he's got to tell the American people the direction that he's heading, and we'll go with him.
Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, thank you so much for your time. Excellent as always. You were patient zero. You've been through so much. You're a patriot. Come back soon. Thank you.
God bless, Charlie. Thank you.
Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, give us a comment and hit the beautiful bell and subscribe, and allow me to play for you a little bit of a teaser, play cut 52. America Fest tickets are already live, amfest.com. Also, I will be coming to a campus near you, tpusa.com. Start a high school chapter, start a college chapter. That is tpusa.com, tpusa.com. And again, leave comments below. I love reading them. Thank you guys for watching and subscribing.